So before I begin, a little about me. Some of you know me, some of you, I'm your senior associate, others of you do not. I have over 20 years of overseas experience. Formerly, I was a teacher of history and politics. I've been a middle school principal, an assistant principal, a curriculum coordinator, amongst other things, and also been a director superintendent of a major IB school for a 12-year period. I worked on the European Council of International Schools Board for 6 years, which oversees international schools and development. I chair accreditation teams for the Council of International Schools. I've been presented at numerous conferences, and I've worked as a senior associate for 6 years now with Search Associates. So I think I know a little bit about what I'm talking about today, and by all means, if you think otherwise, please feel free to comment on that at the end. But as we move on, the content of today's presentation will basically cover the following 6 topics. Why would you think about moving abroad? What international schools are? What to expect when you move abroad? The kind of packages that you might hope for when you move abroad, what we are as an organization, and then give you some time to ask some questions if you'd like to do that. Can everybody just confirm to me that the slides are moving on in the presentation? Just put a little thumbs up on the screen, and that way I'll know that all the technical ends are working okay. Got some thumbs up. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Okay, so you're well qualified. You're teachers. You have a really unique skill set that can take you anywhere in the world, and you're thinking about moving, perhaps for the first time, perhaps for the second time, and wondering about what to do and where to go. And you're wondering about what those reasons are that would take you abroad. Is it just to travel, to live somewhere new, to experience a new culture, work with a new curriculum, some great professional development, and frankly, that's a pretty good reason to go save some money somewhere, because international schools do pay pretty well around the world, depending on where you go. And there is a big difference. So for those of you who are looking at the dollar angle of it, there's a difference between different countries and different schools, even within the same country. So when you join us and when you look at our database, you'll see the kind of average salary package that teachers get, and also the savings potential in any particular area. But you're all at different stages in your careers and on different stages of your journeys. You may have a huge amount of experience living somewhere and never moved abroad at all. You may be living abroad currently and thinking of a second move somewhere else. And you may have very little experience and are thinking of a first move abroad recently after qualification. So you're all at different stages on your journeys. And I hope that I can at least touch on a number of the questions or a number of the issues that are coming up for you along the way. And some of you, of course, are looking for that big, wild, exotic adventure into the unknown, perhaps to the Far East, somewhere in Africa. Others of you might be looking for somewhere safer, closer to home. Maybe it's a big city that you've been to before. Maybe it's somewhere where you have friends and relatives. Maybe it's a country that speaks the same language that you do to make you feel a lot happier, safer, and more comfortable. And I think certainly a number of people in the wake of our COVID legacy are wondering about where to move in terms of healthcare, in terms of safety, and in terms of communication with a family. So all those are valid questions to think about when you're taking that plunge and moving abroad. But there are international schools literally everywhere in the world. Any country you can conceivably imagine has an international school. Sometimes they're to serve the local business and expatriate communities. Sometimes they're to serve United Nations workers in the more far-flung corners of the world. And whatever venture you're looking for, whatever type of challenge that you're looking for, you'll find it through international teaching. Some of you might be looking for what you consider to be a better school, and international schools on the whole are pretty good schools. They charge fees to parents, and they're private schools, so parents expect a lot, and resources are plentiful. Class sizes are on the whole fairly low. I think those of you coming from the States and the UK and Canada, places like that, might be used to 30-odd children in a primary school class, and I think probably the average in a primary class in an international is going to be somewhere around 20. Professional development is excellent, usually in international schools, because you can't make the assumption that teachers know it all when they arrive. Everyone's on an ongoing learning journey. We all need to understand new things about not only the school we've just arrived at, but education in general. We need to hone our pedagogy. And so a lot of international schools have fairly significant professional development budgets to send teachers away on courses locally, around the world even, and sometimes around your local community. And if not, there's online resources available everywhere. But quite frankly, I think some of the best professional development you get in international schools is the cross-fertilization of ideas with people that are coming from all over the world. You'll teach with teachers from New Zealand, and they can tell you about the wonderful reading programs they have in early childhood there. You'll teach with teachers from the States, and they'll tell you about how math is taught in America. You'll teach with teachers from all over the world with some really fantastic experiences. Most international schools have wonderful facilities, whether that's internally or externally. Great classrooms, great learning facilities. They'll make the most of the culture, the landscape around them, the school and the resources available. And most international schools reflect a lot of the culture of the country in which they exist. It's really important that you understand that international schools offer wide-ranging after-school activities and programs. International schools tend to be a home from home for international expatriate kids. And because they don't often have access to local community programs because of language barriers and difficulty with access, international schools provide them with, be it a volleyball team, an orchestra, a choir, a ham radio club, a chess club, the football team, the rugby team, and a whole variety of things like that. As an international teacher, you're expected to be involved in those things. You're expected to be part of the community and offer those after-school activities. International schools are communities in their own rights. And learning outside the classroom is something that you can really take to whole new levels. You'll be in a new country yourself with a new culture, and you'll want to take advantage of the surrounding environment of the countryside, the nature, the cityscape, wherever you are. And you'll want to take your kids to the outdoors, to the local museums, and experience that massive array of culture on offer. And so international schools tend to really value learning outside the classroom. I know at the international school I worked at, we bought an outdoor ed center, a field study center where kids could go up into the mountains and ski and provide a whole number of activities, which were really down to the teachers to offer. And they did a fantastic job in offering a whole variety of different things at the outdoor ed center. So there are great professional development opportunities for teachers around the world, including learning about the IB, the International Baccalaureate Program, becoming part of that group of teachers around the world, and how to get into the IB when you've never taught the IB before. That's a whole different conversation. And I'm thinking about running a presentation or a seminar on that in the future. So stay tuned for that one. Generally speaking, you'll get a good salary. It'll be competitive locally, regionally, and globally. A lot of international schools, depending on where you go, will offer housing as well. And the more hardship the country is perceived to be, the more you're likely to be offered a bigger package, including medical and housing. For example, if you're somewhere in Europe, you probably won't be offered much housing or much in the way of medical because you'll be offered a good salary, you'll get it locally, you'll be able to organize that as you will. If you go somewhere in Africa, perhaps Southeast Asia, the Middle East, the package will probably come with housing, with medical insurance, perhaps with annual return flights. And so you think carefully about where you're going in terms of the package that you're looking for. Now, there are many different types of international schools out there, and I'll just run through some of them now. I see Lee smiling because he recognizes that photograph there. A lot of international schools offer internationally accepted education programs, and they're designed to offer mobility to transient expatriate communities. Those are those communities who want to move around the world, where mum or dad works for a big multinational company, Johnson & Johnson, Biogen, it could be a big bank or something like that. And one day they may be transferred to Johannesburg, the next day they're transferred to Beijing, 3 years later they're transferred to Rio, and 4 years after that, they're back in Washington. And so how do you go to a school where your kids can be transitioned from one school to the next with the minimal fuss and the minimal interference? And that's the idea of, I guess, the major number of international schools around the world. They're designed to offer that mobility, and they often try to do that through the IB programs. IB, of course, stands for International Baccalaureate. Excuse me, I'm going to take a quick slurp. And the International Baccalaureate programs are designed around several core principles, and they allow students to access a curriculum which they would find the same pedagogy for wherever they were in the world. Now, these kind of schools are designed specifically for expatriate children to facilitate mobility. So they get a similar experience in Seoul, Zurich, Rio, Kinshasa, wherever they end up, wherever their parents take them around the world. They cater to mobile business leaders, foreign governments, workers, children, and generally speaking, the language of instruction is English pretty much all the way through in international schools, apart from one or two that I'll mention soon. And that's the broad and basic international school that most of us are closely associated with. The parents are very involved in international schools, and there's this terrible term, trailing spouses. But it very much describes a lot of the parents that we get in international schools, where let's say the wife is employed in a fairly senior capacity with a major international organization or company, and the husband comes and doesn't have a job. Is there looking after the kids and needs and wants something to do, and becomes majorly involved in the school, whether that's as a board member, whether that's volunteering on the parents' organization, whether that's helping out with somewhere around the school. And these international schools really do become central hubs of the community. They're another type of school too, the English-speaking schools for locals, and they're schools comprising mostly of local children, and they offer an international education program, and that could be a British education, it could be an international IB education, it could be an American education, anything like that. But it's a school designed specifically to help local children master English, and that's for purposes of going to university in the States or the UK, Canada, South Africa, Australia, or it could be for business reasons, that they know full well that English is really the language of a lot of international business, and they want their kids to have mastery of that as they move forwards. And that's one of the things you have to ask yourself. If you're traveling abroad with kids and you have a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old, well, you're more than likely going to have your kids in the same school as you. And if that school is completely dominated by kids who are Chinese speaking or Spanish speaking, is that something you want for your kids? The local culture of the school will often reflect the culture of the country that you're in, rather than a broadly global international culture. They'll often have higher EAL needs in that school. And the flip side of that, of course, it can be a fantastic way to integrate into a local culture and a local community. You'll learn the language much more quickly and much more readily. You'll be part of the country in which you're in, rather than part of a global expatriate bubble. It's horses for courses, and you take your choice as to what you're looking for. And of course, there are native curriculum schools, schools offering national programs abroad, the American School of London, Singapore German School, the British School of Jeddah, and there are British curriculum schools, American curriculum schools, French curriculum schools, the world over. And your experience from wherever you're coming from may match this more precisely and give you a little more comfort, if you like, if it's your first move abroad and you're thinking, well, I've not taught an international curriculum before. It'd be really great if I could get the British School of Bangladesh or something and move there. And then my move to Bangladesh culturally will be less difficult, because at least I know the curriculum I'm teaching. Some of these schools also offer the IB, and again, they're designed to help specific national groups move abroad and transition back to home countries with ease. So if you're, for example, in a British company, you're being transferred to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, you want your kids to go to the British School of Jeddah, just so 5 years later, when you're transferred back to the UK, the transition's as seamless as it could possibly be when your kids go back to their home country. Now, there are also groups in there who think, well, I want my kid to get a British education. I might be from Japan, but I'd really like my kid to get a British education while I'm in Saudi, because I really value British education. So again, it's not just national, singular nationality groups that populate these schools. There are multinational groups too, and they can be a fantastic opportunity. Now, one thing that's important to mention at this stage is that if your curriculum experience doesn't match the school that you're interested in, it really doesn't matter. Good teachers are good teachers wherever they are in the world. Learning a new curriculum is often just learning a little bit of new pedagogy, a couple of different assessment strategies, and a whole bunch of new acronyms, and you're there. It's a really easy thing to do. So I wouldn't worry about whether you're making an application to a school for which you have very little curriculum experience. That's absolutely fine. My first international job abroad was at the American International School of Zurich. I taught American in middle school, then I taught USAPs, having come from London, where I'd previously taught GCSE and A levels. Thereafter, I learned and taught the IB programs, middle years program, and IB diploma. So look, it's really easy, and I can tell you from experience that switching between curriculum programs is not something you should be at all worried about. So what is an international school? We have what we call third culture kids. I know this term is going a bit out of fashion recently, but this is kind of new generation of global nomads, where you'll walk around an international school corridor and you'll say to a child, where do you come from? And they'll say, well, I don't know. Do you mean where my parents are from, where my mum's from, where my dad's from, which country I've lived in the longest, which passports I have from which different countries? They'll have no clear sense of roots and identity in the same way that most of us grew up with. They'll be just as at home in an airport as they are anywhere else. And they don't have that sense of identity to say, yes, I'm Spanish, or yes, I'm American, as a number of other people might have grown up with. And so this generation of kids thinks of school as home a lot of the time. And that's why it's super important for international teachers not to be hired to teach French or to teach primary or to teach physics. You're hired to teach kids, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. And I think it's really important that international teachers, we remember that we're there for the kids in so many more ways than just an academic education. As I mentioned before, the parents are fee paying and they have super high expectations. You'll get those parents of kids in grade 3 who come in and ask you as a teacher how you're going to get their kid into Harvard in 12 years' time. And you're pretty dumbfounded trying to find an answer to that kind of question. But they really do expect the highest of their kids. They're paying a lot of money to send their kids there. And often, if it's a local school for local kids with an English language medium, it can be a significant portion of their salary that they're paying in order to try and give their kids the best break they can possibly get. And so it's really important that you understand, whilst of course you're having a wonderful cultural experience and a life change, you're also going to be working pretty hard too to give these kids the best job that you can possibly give them. Part of what you do is to help create a sense of community and identity in the school. And so for those of you who are thinking about being teacher tourists and job hoppers, going a year to China and a year to Brazil and then a year to Mongolia and then a year to Thailand, where a lot of international school heads really aren't looking for that. They're looking for someone who can come and commit for 2 or 3 years minimum, hopefully will stay 4 or 5, because contribution to a community means establishing relationships. It means building up an identity. It means helping understand what the school's trying to do, understand the families that are part of it and the kids that are in it, and contributing towards it. And so don't think that you're going to go somewhere for 1 year at a time. And as soon as the heads start seeing 1 year here, 1 year there, 1 year somewhere else on a CV, they're going to start thinking very seriously about whether or not it's worth hiring you, because it costs a whole lot of money to bring you out in the first place. Then you're going to have to be trained. Then you're going to have to get to know the community and the culture. And it takes you at least a year to get to know the school and its culture regardless. So please don't think you're going to go everywhere for a year. Know that you're going to have to go somewhere and commit. There'll be kids from a huge number of different countries. Sometimes you'll get kids from 3 or 4 different nationalities that are dominant. Other times there'll be kids from 50, 60, 70, 80 different nationalities in the same school. I think the school we were part of had 1,300 kids in it, and we had kids from about 70 or so different nationalities at one time or another. And the teachers themselves will come from huge numbers of different backgrounds. I think any good head of school wants to hire a teacher demographic that reflects the student demographic as much as is possible. What you don't want is the international school of Ulaanbaatar having only American teachers. You'd really want them to have teachers from around the world. And so those of you that think international schools are only going to hire teachers from those English-speaking countries, the UK, Ireland, South Africa, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, America. That's wrong. Really, we'd like to hire teachers from the Czech Republic, from India, from any of the African countries, if we at all possibly can, bearing in mind some of the difficulties that we have with getting work permits. And I'll come to that later. A lot of international schools will have strong EAL programs. That's English as an additional language. I use the word English as an additional language, or the phrase, rather than English as a second language, because English is often not the second language of a lot of these kids. It's the 3rd, 4th, or 5th. And you'll find that you have a lot of kids who speak multiple languages, which can lead to sometimes a lot of problems when it comes to their linguistic learning, where they don't manage to master a single language, but have managed to be fairly proficient in multiple. And so again, that has implications for your teaching and how you teach them. So when it comes to interviewing for international schools and you get asked about EAL programs, have some good answers prepared about how you would cater to EAL students, what kind of strategies you use in the classroom to meet their needs. A lot of international schools are standalone. And what that means is, let's say you're in a German-speaking environment, and the majority of the kids that are at the school are there for 2 to 3 years and don't speak German. Well, it's not necessarily a truism that you'll be able to outsource speech therapy, educational psychology, and social services in the local community. And so we have to have those in-house. So there are positions for 𝐬𝐧𝐠, speech therapists, and learning support teachers, amongst other things, in the context of international schools. They tend to have pretty big and expansive special ed departments or EAL departments and other positions in school, simply because it's impossible to outsource them. If you're in the middle of China, for example, and you've got mostly American English and Australian kids in your school, they won't have access to those local services. And the curriculum program does teach transferable skills. I already mentioned the IB, but when you're looking at the programs, of course, every country that you're in and every country that you come from will have its national preferences. And you teach maths in a certain way, and there's always 1 and 1's going to be 2 wherever you come from. But in the UK, we may prefer a certain type of history. In America, something different there. In India, another type of history altogether. But what a lot of international curricula focus on is a skills-based curriculum where you can plug in a lot of different data, information, facts, in whatever kind of context you want, but the skills are the ones that are transferable across curriculum programs. So how do they work? What does an international school look like? Well, a lot of them can be not-for-profit, whereby they're run as charitable funds, charitable trusts. There'll be a board, whatever they earn from parent fees or from charitable donations goes straight back to the school. That could be in the form of resources, it could be in the form of salaries for teachers, could be in the form of building projects for new developments. So they're not-for-profit schools. And there are others that are privately owned. And just because the school's privately owned, it doesn't mean it's worse or better than one that's not for profit. Any business that's privately owned knows full well that it has to reinvest back in the business in order for that business to be successful. Now, it's up to you to ask the questions at interview or find out online through reviews whether a privately owned school is investing back in the school enough. Some are run by consortiums, and an increasing number of these consortiums are buying up international schools around the world, whether that's something like GEMS, North Anglia, Dulwich College, or something like that. And you'll see these names when you're looking through jobs, whether it be with us or with other organizations. And those consortiums often have a central office. They'll have curriculum oversight at the central office. They'll have people that come out and inspect and observe what's going on at the schools to ensure that there's consistency across campuses and across schools in different countries. And so they can be really interesting people to work with too. Again, they're for profit. Some schools are sponsored by embassies. And so you'll get, let's say, the American Embassy School in Mumbai. And so the board is largely comprised of American Embassy staff. It was originally for American Embassy children, but latterly it's admitted a lot more from different workers and different businesses around the world. Most of them have a board of trustees or an owner that's strongly involved. And even if there is an owner, that owner may delegate some of the not necessarily decision-making authority, but some of the considerations to a group that might serve as a consultative board. And that board of trustees will oversee what's going on at the school. I guess that the way you look at a board of trustees in an international school is noses in, fingers out. So they should be leaving the running of an international school to the school administration, but providing appropriately for ongoing forward planning, making sure they're asking the hard questions for accountability and those kind of things. Most international schools will be what we call K through 12, kindergarten through grade 12, age 3 through age 18. So for those of you who've never seen or heard of that little phrase before, K-12 means age 3 to 18. And so that means that in the context of an international school, there are actually 3 other schools. So there's a primary school, a middle school, and a high school quite often. And each of those schools will have a head. So there'll be a head of primary, a head of middle, and a head of high school, and they'll all report to a director that oversees consistency and continuity through the divisions of the school so that there is as much as can be possibly provided. And that's referred to as a superintendent, a director, sometimes a CEO. International schools are independently responsible for hiring, firing, finance, resources, facilities, HR, marketing, curriculum, just about everything else. So some of you that are coming from schools in a national location where the school is part of a borough responsibility, there'll be local government offices that deal with finance, local government offices that deal with firing or hiring or facilities development. And then the running of the school is just down to the head teacher in terms of curriculum and in terms of teaching and learning. That's not the case with independent schools and international schools. All of that comes down to the head of school who works collaboratively with a board. So be aware that they are independent and independently responsible for a whole bunch of things. And that makes them interesting places to work because international schools are standalone. That means they often have no overarching authority that can provide guarantees that what they're doing is good. It also means that they have the freedom to pursue curriculum and teaching and learning in a way that's unencumbered and unhindered by huge amounts of administrivia and paperwork that has to go on in national systems. But by the same token, it means they're free to abuse that. So ask the right questions. And make sure you're going to a school where you've done sufficient research to know and understand that, yeah, they're doing some good things there and people are happy. It also means we get to hire from teachers from all over the world. And those teachers from all over the world, as I mentioned before, can be the most engaging and rewarding thing to work with in an international school. Getting to know and understand different ways of teaching, different pedagogies from all over the world, different understandings about what it means to be a good teacher, a good learner, how to work with kids, how to help kids from all over the world. And that's something that I found most rewarding in my career. One thing I think you should look out for is accreditation. I mentioned this before in the context of what I've done in the past. Because these international schools are independent and have very little in terms of overarching authorities, a lot of them go through processes of what we call accreditation. In the UK, you may have heard of that term as inspection. may associate it with something like the Office for Standards in Education, Ofsted. There are organisations, CIS, the Council of International Schools, 𝐃𝐫𝐞𝐚𝐦𝐢𝐧𝐠, the Confederation of British International Schools, NEASC, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, WASC, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. It's death by acronym, I'm afraid, but there are a huge number of these organisations where they will provide site visits by experienced professionals who will oversee and, if you like, to some extent, rubber stamp the quality of the program of education that's going on in the school so that you know there is some external audit of what's going on at an international school. So when you're doing your searches for international schools, when you're looking at your jobs on offer, please do take a look and see what their accreditation status is. Check that they've got an accreditation mark with some external organization because it's usually a mark of good practice. Now, I mentioned before that we try to hire teachers from all over the world, but we, as heads of school, also face local ministry regulations. Schools cannot hire whoever they want. They have to jump through a whole host of local and national regulatory hoops to get residence and work permits for teachers. And schools have HR departments to do this. So those of you who are coming from difficult parts of the world or other parts of the world and thinking, geez, I'm going to have to secure my own work permit, my own residence permit, I'm going to have to submit my passport, go through all this paperwork. Well, rest assured, don't worry about that. International schools, good international schools, have human resources departments. They'll just ask you for your paperwork, whether that's marriage certificate, education certificates, degree certificates, whether that's birth certificates and things like that. They'll need a whole bunch of paperwork from you, but they'll do all the work for you in the local language and with the local authorities. In a number of countries, you must have a teaching qualification. I get asked this all the time. Can I become an international school teacher? I have a degree in business studies. Well, in the large majority of them, no, because schools will need to find a work permit for you, and they'll only get granted a work permit if you have a teaching certification and qualification. That looks different for different countries in the world. Okay, it's a PGCE or a Bachelor of Education or something like that if you're British. If you come from India, it will be something different. If you come from Ghana, it will be something different again. But as long as you are a qualified teacher in your home country, you have teaching certification that should be permissible for you to get a job overseas. Not everywhere. The school must be able to prove often that you're a better candidate than anyone they can source locally. That means that when I was head of school, I used to have to submit about 5 or 10 curriculum vitae of people that had submitted applications locally for permission to work at the school. And I thought the person I wanted to hire from abroad was a better candidate. And I had to submit a rationale as to why the candidate from abroad was better than the Swiss person who'd applied for the job. International schools have to do that all over the world. And they have to justify why they want to hire each and every new member of staff. And frankly, schools might be subject to government restrictions on where staff can come from or how old they are to be able to get work permits from them. Qatar, for example, at the moment, you can't get a work permit for anyone over 56 who wants to go to Qatar. So there are age cutoffs and age restrictions, not enforced by the schools, but enforced by government ministries that the schools just simply have to abide by. When I was working and running a school in Switzerland, if I wanted to submit a work permit for a Ghanaian music teacher, they would say to me, well, you're an international school and your medium of instruction is English. This person is not an English speaker. We won't give you a work permit. And much as I wanted to hire the Ghanaian music teacher, I couldn't. So it can be incredibly difficult for schools all over the world. The reason I tell you this now is because I know some of you will be out there, have sent off masses of applications and are frustrated because you do come from parts of the world where you're not English speaking. It's not your major tongue. It's not what you grew up with necessarily. And that can be incredibly frustrating. It's not the schools. The schools are subject to government restrictions locally and nationally. So what to expect from your first move? Well, the biggest and best schools in the most desirable locations are normally the most competitive positions to apply for. Duh. Of course. You may get lucky, you may rule it out. Look, I can tell you that every 20-something-year-old out there who's looking for their first international school posting wants to go to Thailand, travel around Southeast Asia with a backpack during their vacation periods and have a wonderful time. And that means that there's several hundred applications for every position that's being advertised for schools in Thailand. And you just got to live with that. You've got to accept that. And if this is your first move abroad, you have to think to yourself, well, maybe I'm not going to get that position in Thailand. Maybe I don't have that experience that I need yet. And maybe I can make that my second international or third international job. Doesn't mean you might not get lucky. Never rule it out. If you're a good teacher, international schools all over the world are looking for good teachers. But be careful when you're thinking and dreaming about what you're going to get when you get out there. And you're competing against other candidates with international experience and possibly experience of the curriculum on offer. So if this is your first time overseas and you don't have an IB experience and you're competing against someone who does have IB experience, well, maybe you're a little lower down the list. And on top of those things, the experience, the heads out there are wondering, look, and I mentioned this before, how long is this person going to stay for? Will they contribute towards a community? Are they going to get homesick? Will they get what we're trying to do? Will they understand what international schools truly are? Or will they come in and say, well, this is not the way they used to do it at my school. In the UK, we used to, and just be a real pain. Will they get kids and the community? Will they get third culture kids? Will they really want to contribute to that wider community in the school? And it's sometimes useful to think 1 or 2 moves ahead. It's sometimes useful to think to yourself, well, I'm coming in green. I don't have this international school experience. Yeah, of course I want to go to Thailand. Of course I want to go to Switzerland. Of course I want to go to these wonderful countries around the world, these A-list countries where everyone wants to live, where the standard and quality of living is wonderful. But I need to get some experience before I get there. So maybe I need to lower my sights a little. Maybe I need to say to myself, well, I'll go to somewhere for 2, 3, 4 years, test myself, make sure I get good references from wherever I am, and make sure when I go back in 3 or 4 years' time, I'm a experienced, qualified international teacher, and then I'll get that job in Switzerland or Thailand or the States or wherever else that I'm thinking of going. So be flexible, rule nothing out until you've seen and heard what a school has to say. And I think that's a really important point to be aware of. You're going to spend a lot of time in the school. You're going to spend a lot of time working with the community. And there may be places in the world that you would think, I don't really want to go there. And that's fair comment. But it may well be that there's an absolute gem of a school in a location that you weren't considering. So speak to everyone. Don't rule anything out until you've heard what a recruiter has to say, until you've listened to what is being said about the school from other people, until you evaluate whether you could be happy there, whether it could be a good move for you in terms of your career. So be flexible. Rule everything in until you rule it out. And please do remember, all schools are different and none are perfect. I'm sure the school you're at the moment, there are things that you would love to change about it. So don't expect wherever you're going to next to be absolute perfection. It won't be. Okay, a little about contracts, duration, expectations, obligations. So most international schools we work with, as I mentioned before, have human resources departments. It's not up to you to get your work permit and residence visa. It is up to you to have the paperwork available to be able to submit to the human resources department in a timely way. So please do make sure you have universities transcripts, you have copies of your passport and things like that that you're ready to give to them. If you're taking kids with you, you'll need to make sure that you have their birth certificates and things like that because you're moving kids into a new country. You're getting a residence permit for kids too. HR will provide housing options or assist with requirements, and so don't worry about things like that. Most first contracts are for 2 to 3 years, and if that goes well, they're usually renewable. Some schools will give you a re-signing bonus, and that's not a resigning bonus. I wish I could have given some people a resigning bonus, quite frankly, but it's a re-signing bonus. And if you sign a new contract and agree to stay there for another 2 or 3 years, you'll get a bonus for staying there. And the more it's a hardship country, the more you're going to get things like re-signing bonuses. The contract should specify the number of teaching days, the job expectations and things like that. And look, this is what we're here for. If you're signed up with Search Associates, you'll have a senior associate. If you get offered a contract, please reach out to your senior associate and say, hey, listen, could you take a quick look through this contract or this offer of employment that I've got? Does it look reasonable to you? And that's one of the ways in which you can use us as a resource. As I mentioned, as a general rule, the more hardship the post, the more the school does and the more help it will provide for you. As a member of staff, you'll generally be expected to teach classes, do the assessment and reporting, have a pastoral role, attend meetings, everything that you'll do in your current school, and run or offer after-school activities and participate in perhaps weeks away. There'll be field studies weeks. Kids at the place we used to go to, we were in Switzerland. The high school used to send kids to Nepal, to Kenya, to Iceland, to the States. And you'd be expected to participate on trips like that. So it is significant time away from home and away from families, but you should go there with open eyes, be expecting to be part of that and enjoy it. The curriculum. And I've mentioned this before, but I think it's a really good place to start. A good teacher is a good teacher. And the most significant difference in whether you get a job or don't get a job internationally is, of course, on top of your experience, the quality of references you get. We ask for references up front, so recruiters in our organization can see your references. They will be able to select or not select you on the basis of the quality of those references. So be nice to whoever is writing your references and make sure you choose referees who know you as a teacher and who like what you do. And if you're somewhere in terms of where you are at the moment, your next place, don't forget that administrators will always make decisions you don't like. There'll always be things that go on in the school that you disagree with. But you're going to have to get someone to ask you to write you a reference at some stage. And if you're belligerent and painful about things, they're not going to write you a good reference. I know it's rocket science, isn't it, really? Please, it's the most important thing I can tell you. Make sure you get good references and really ask people to give you good references that know you well. Learning a new curriculum is mostly a matter of adjusting pedagogy. Look, you're all good teachers. You wouldn't be signed up with us unless you were good teachers. It's just a matter of learning some new things, learning a new assessment style, a few new acronyms. I've mentioned it before. IB schools can be really picky about preferring candidates with IB experience. And so I get so many candidates asking me, well, how can I get IB experience if people won't hire me to get IB experience? And it's a kind of chicken and egg situation. And it's absolutely right. I used to tell my head of primary that no, she had to have a certain number of teachers coming in every year that didn't have IB experience. And it was a really difficult conversation because she really wanted teachers with IB experience. And it's true because it certainly requires a certain kind of inquiry-based pedagogy, an understanding of education and a commitment to teaching and learning in a certain way. But if you can use the vocabulary that is prevalent and predominant in IB reports, transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, collaboratively planning, inquiry-based pedagogy, in a cover letter. You're going to demonstrate that you're committed to the IB ways of working and teaching. And so that's one of the good ways of getting in there. There are a huge number of different curriculum frameworks, even in the international system, the PYP, Primary Years Programme, the International Primary Curriculum, the UK curriculum, and all the rest of it. And so I wouldn't worry a jot about transferable skills. Generally speaking, okay, history is a slightly different one because each national curriculum has its own different history that it values above others. But the science curriculum is going to be the same wherever you are. The maths curriculum is going to be the same all over the world, and pretty much everything else. And so don't worry about the different systems that you would go into. I've taught history, IBDP, I've taught history A-level, and I've taught history AP in American. And I can tell you that there's not a massive amount of difference. The assessment was different in many ways, and the breadth over depth conversation sometimes makes a difference. But if you're a good teacher, you can teach it wherever you are. Moving abroad is life-changing, so please do give this some thought. The decision to move abroad is a massive one, and if this is your first time, the world, of course, is your oyster. You can go wherever you want, and you'll get a huge, huge amount out of teaching internationally. But you'll also give up a lot. Your current lifestyle, your family, your home, your friends, your language, your culture, you're giving all of that up to move somewhere new. Think about that and make sure you're ready. There is nothing a head wants less than someone that gets buyer's regret 5 months before they're due to, or 5 weeks before they're due to turn up and say, I'm not coming anymore. And then them have to scramble around for a last minute replacement for you. Really make sure this is what you want to do. Really know, because you're committing not only to the school, you're committing to the kids in that school. And if you're going to leave a head without a grade 4 teacher at the last minute or 4 weeks after arrival, then that's not fair to the kids in that classroom. And if you're in teaching, you're there because you love kids and you want to do the right thing by them. This is not about you, this is about kids. And so please make sure you're ready to go before you go and before you embark on this journey. Ask yourself some key questions as part of that process. What are you looking for? It's an adventure, of course, but how much of an adventure? Is it a hop over the water into the local country next door, be that France or Ecuador or Hong Kong, wherever you're coming from and wherever you live? Do you want to go the other side of the world? Do you want to go teach in Sudan and you don't mind being next to a civil war because that's just the kind of person you are? And we get people with us that are like that, and that's cool. There's horses for every course. And I think those people that feel committed to teaching in those more hardship locations in the world because they feel they can really make a difference are some of the most interesting and engaging people to work with. Of course, you'd like to travel and see and experience new cultures, but be aware of being perceived as a teacher tourist when you go through that interview process. Is it a career choice? Are you dipping in for 2 or 3 years and then dipping back home again once you've got something to pay a bit of the mortgage off? Or are you thinking, well, this is a career choice. I want to jump into international education and maybe I'm going to spend 4 or 5 years one place, 4 or 5 years another place, 5 or 6 years and become a head of school eventually. That's my career choice. And I think it's been the most rewarding career I could have imagined I'd have. Are you looking for some professional development? Are you finding that where you are is just a bit staid and a bit boring? You're doing the same old for so long that you'd like some new ideas. You'd like to go somewhere different and try something new. And of course, I mentioned before, look, saving money is an entirely legitimate reason for wanting to teach abroad. Are you looking for better class sizes, a better school, a life-changing experience? And look, go through all of those. Think to yourself, talk to your partner, talk to your friends, talk to your family and say, okay, help me prioritize what I'm looking for when I move abroad. Help me prioritize what I want to achieve and get out of this move. But remember, it is competitive, so set reasonable expectations about the amount of time you'll have to spend in applying for the first job abroad, because I can tell you, you're going to spend ages. You'll send off tens of applications, maybe even 100. And you'll think that most of them vanish into the ethernet and you never see them again. It's because a lot of heads get a lot of applications. I remember I used to get over 3,000 speculative applications a year for the school that I ran. You just don't have the time to go through speculative applications or genuine applications with any great depth. So think about what your application looks like. Does your CV stand out? How are you presenting yourself? Make sure that when you make those applications, you're clear, concise, to the point, not overly verbose, but you get across enough information about you that gives an employer something of the flavor of who you are and what you can bring to wherever you want to go. And please don't forget, if this is your first job abroad, it might take you some time and a little elasticity to your expectations to get that first foot in through the door. As I mentioned before, all schools are different and none are perfect. Every school's got its quirks, and some things your new school will do will not be what you're used to. They might be way better. Some things may be way worse or non-existent. Some schools may have more resources than they know what to do with, and other schools might get blackout for portions of the day where they can't get any internet, depending on where you are in the world. Some countries may not allow you to use the resources you're used to. If you're used to talking about evolution and things like that, when you're teaching science, well, those textbooks may be banned in Saudi. I once heard a couple of great stories about a whole group of textbooks for the science curriculum that were prohibited from being imported into Saudi. So the teachers had to start off the entire new year with resources that they created from scratch because they just couldn't get the resources into the country. Some schools in the primary might have teaching assistants in every classroom and think that that's absolutely and entirely appropriate. Others may have none. Some schools might have really great EAL departments to help you with planning for learning, and others might not have any help at all. It really depends. You're going to have to be able to go through those questions at interview. And so don't forget, the interview process is a two-way thing. Of course, the school is interviewing you, but you're also interviewing the school. Make sure you have your questions for the school, and those questions should be kind of incisive questions to find out about the culture of the school, the assistance you're going to get in the role for which you've applied if you're successful in it. Find out about the school's priorities. And again, use your senior associate. Ask your senior associate if they know anything about the school to which you've applied, and they can 5 times at least out of 10 help you. If not, they can phone a friend who may be able to help you too. So what does a successful expat look like? Well, they're flexible and they're confident. You've got to have a sense of humor because things will not go according to plan. I can guarantee that. You may arrive somewhere expecting to get the housing that they've promised you. It's not ready yet because they're still putting it up and you're in a hotel for 3 weeks. You may find that your resources haven't arrived. You may find that the colleague that you were supposed to be working with has gone home because their husband was transferred back to Dow Central, wherever that is in America. You've got to be open-minded because you're dealing with kids and cultures from all over the world. And when they look at you and you tell them off, they be looking at the floor and you're saying to them, look at me when I'm telling you off, but that's culturally inappropriate for them. So you've got to be open-minded. You've got to know that you're dealing with different kids in different ways with different cultures. You've got to be resilient, tolerant, patient, adaptable, and optimistic. And I would say that optimistic, a sense of humor, and open-minded are 3 of the most important things on that list. You really are going to have to know, look, it's not going to go to plan at all, but I've got to be able to roll with it. I've got to be able to smile. And if you're the kind of person that's going to get there, shut your door, hope that someone's going to come knocking on it for you to get a social life, it's not going to be for you. You've got to be a go out and getter. You've got to go out and meet people. Yeah, I'll go for a drink. Yeah, let's go out to the zoo next week. That'd be fun. And just go and meet people. You know, those are the kind of people who are successful in this world. So who gets jobs? Good teachers. Good teachers get jobs, and good teachers from everywhere in the world. We have people from all over the world sign up with our organization and they'll get a job. It's not guaranteed anyone will get a job. It's very competitive. International schools used to be the best kept secret in education. That's no longer the case. If you're applying from somewhere in Australia, you can guarantee that for the same position in Bali, people from Canada, America, Britain, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, India, Indonesia, they're all applying for that same job. So you're up against a big, healthy competition. Teachers with great references. I'm sorry, I labored that point a little earlier, but the great references are really important. And as with anywhere in the world, some skills are more in demand than others. Look, it's easier to get a job if you're a IB maths teacher or an IB physics teacher than you are, frankly, a history teacher, because I'm one of those and I can tell you that. Passionate teachers with a sense of adventure and a proven track record. Look, if you're going to get to the point where you've got an interview, show someone that you're passionate, show that you care about kids, show that you care about education, and talk the talk, make sure that you've rehearsed it with someone, make sure that you can really come across as someone that cares about education and about kids. I can't tell you the number of people I interviewed for jobs who, for a French teacher, for example, went on for ages and ages about how wonderful a language the French culture gave you and how great French was, but didn't mention kids once in the entire interview. And I didn't hire them. I want people that are interviewing and interested in kids. Schools do have a preference for singles without dependents, or for teaching couples with or without dependents. And so, look, if you've got 5 kids, you're going to find it really hard to get a job in an international school, because that means that there's 5 fee-paying children that cannot come to the school because your kids will be in the school. That means if those kids were going to pay $20,000 each, that's an extra $100,000 they're paying you if you've got 5 kids. So if you've got kids, usually a maximum of 2 is preferred. What do the packages look like? Well, usually you'll be told how much you'll earn in terms of salaries. There should be something in the contract, or at least in the conversation with the business office or the head of school, about the savings potential or what you'll be taxed. Some will include housing, some will give a housing subsidy, there's medical, there's tuition benefits. A lot will give a return air transfer. Some will give tuition benefits. Some will say, look, we'll give tuition benefits for kids, 3 kids at the most. Some will say we'll give tuition benefit full for the first one, 50% for the second one, and 30% thereafter. It really varies depending on number of kids. Some will give assistance setting up a bank account, but pretty much all will do that. Professional development, and you'll find all of these things on the dashboard with Search Associates. So once you've signed up, once you have an account with us, you'll find all of these things about each of the schools we work with. For those of you who don't know us, and I think most of you do by now, we're the world's largest international school recruitment agency. We make over 300 or 3,000 appointments each year. We do not hire teachers. We connect teachers with schools, and we work with over 700 schools each year. The majority of our schools have been visited and vetted. They have to apply to us to register in the same way as candidates, and we do turn many schools away. All of the senior associates have lived and worked abroad, and many of us have led international schools around the world. Each region in Search Associates is run independently, and it's an American organization. For those of you who are looking at the language and saying, well, that's all American spelling. Well, it's an American organization out of Philadelphia, but we work in regions all around the world. And for those people that sign up with us, we'll help you with job-related questions with your search. We'll support you if you need it with contracts. And after you're hired, that's when we don't stop. So once you go to the international school of, I don't know, Guangzhou in China, if you have a question a year into contract, you're more than welcome to get back to us and say, hey, listen, this has happened in the school. Can you help me through this? I just need an understanding. Is this happening in other international schools around the world? What do you advise I do? And so we're always there for teachers who've found jobs through our organization. We have a wide-reaching database, and on the database, there's lots of information about curriculum, demographics of staff, student population, working days, holiday, and loads of things like that. And so it's a bit of a one-stop shop. You fill out a registration with us, and then you can just click a send button with a small message to a school and say, hey, listen, I'm really interested in your vacancy for primary teacher at the International School of Rio. Please, would you take a look at my CV and my details on the Search Associate website? They'll do that. They'll take a look, and if they decide that you're probably a candidate they're interested in, they'll get back in touch and say, hey, perhaps we can set up an interview. Please do remember, we're not magicians. We can do no magic. Not everyone who registers with us will get a job. There are no guarantees or promises of employment. We'll do the best we possibly can to help you. We'll do the best we possibly can to position you to be able to get a job somewhere around the world. And we'll give as much as we possibly can. But there are no guarantees that you will get a job in an international school through us. And that's pretty much the end of the presentation. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope that was worthwhile. I'm going to stop share and stop recording in just a second. And then I will